outside in the yard. You hear a child screaming at your neighbor's house. You can hear someone yelling at the child, yet you can't understand exactly what they're saying. So you don't think a lot about it. You just go on about your business. 2 days later, you see the child riding a bicycle down the street in front of your house. You notice the child has on long sleeves, which is really strange because it's August in Georgia. And we all know how hot it is in Georgia in August. So a few days later, you see the child with a cast on its arm. You're beginning to get suspicious, but what can you do? After all, you could be wrong. Once again at night, you hear the child crying, and you think the child is probably just misbehaving, yet you hear someone yelling at it. Again, you think, really, it's none of my business. The next morning, you're awakened by a knock on the door. A police officer is standing at the door and asks you if you ever heard or saw anything out of the ordinary from the house next door. The police officer then informs you that a 7-year-old child was brutally beaten to death by one of its parents. How do you react? Do you feel sick, guilty, maybe even a tiny bit responsible? You can't sleep for months and you keep replaying in your mind over and over what you could have done. You could have done something. My name is Pamela Henderson and I've been in law enforcement over 15 years. During these years, unfortunately, I've worked many cases of child abuse. Today I want to explain how widespread and serious this crime is. Most of us have heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I'm here to tell you today that it takes a community to save a child, and I encourage you to take action to help fight this crime against our children. First of all, the lack of recognition and reporting child abuse poses a serious risk to children. Imagine, in the United States alone, 205,438 children reported sexual child abuse, and 6,897 children reported physical abuse in 2014 alone, according to the National Children's Alliance and National Statistics on Child Abuse. Now consider this. These statistics were reported cases of child abuse, so you can imagine how many goes unreported every year. Sadly, there are daily reports on the news about child abuse cases. For example, do you remember a year or so ago in Georgia when the news media was so hot and coming down hard on social services because they failed to do their jobs properly, and several children under their care in foster homes ended up not being removed from the home, or worse yet, ended up deceased. Also think about a well-televised case, the J.C. Dugard case, an 11-year-old girl who was abducted walking from a bus stop in 1991 in South Lake Tahoe, California. She was missing for more than 18 years, and she was abducted by a husband and wife team, Philip and Nancy Garrido. And she was held in captivity and suffered cruel abuse, sexual abuse, having 2 children by this abuser and molester and the abductor. Law enforcement have been to the home on many occasions, as well as parole. And the couple living next door lived in a neighborhood just like ours. So in 2009, Philip Garrido and 2 of the girls were on a California University campus, and someone thought it suspicious and reported it. Thank God, or J.C. Dugard might still be held in captivity today. According to the Child Welfare Information Gateway, many researchers and practitioners believe that child fatalities due to abuse and neglect are still underreported. I'm sure all of us know someone who has suffered abuse but has never reported it. Some people are mandated reporters, such as police officers, social services, daycare workers, teachers, and medical personnel. Private citizens are not required to report, but let me ask you, isn't it our moral and ethical obligation to report? So now I want to talk to you about how to recognize and report suspected child abuse cases. Recognizing and reporting child abuse of any type is the moral obligation of every one of us. No one is excluded. Learning to recognize the potential signs of child abuse are very important. For example, some of these warning signs could include the child begins having trouble in school, such as absences or low grades. The child demonstrates inappropriate knowledge of sexual behaviors or demonstrates physical or sexual aggression towards other children. The child becomes withdrawn, depressed, suicidal. These are certainly not all inclusive, however, they are signs to be aware of. According to the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, 93% of victims under the age of 18 know the abuser. 93%. Let that soak in for a minute. The J.C. Dugard case was a stranger upon stranger abduction and abuse. But it's incredibly more common that the abuser is known to the child. It is often a family member, a neighbor, a good friend of the family. Many child predators attempt to groom the child. They start out by gaining the trust of the parents or taking the child places, buying them things, and then eventually they go from being someone the child trusts to becoming an abuser. This means you as a parent need to be aware of who you allow to have access to your own children. To report suspected child abuse, contact your local law enforcement or social services. You can even do this anonymously if you prefer, and social services and law enforcement will conduct an investigation into the case. If you have intimate knowledge, such as a child has disclosed abuse to you, it is better to provide a statement for law enforcement because this helps to corroborate the case, and it helps law enforcement prove their case in court. By recognizing and reporting abuse, you can make a tremendous difference in a child's life and future, and by not reporting the abuse, you could be a contributing factor in allowing the abuse to continue. The joy you get from helping a child is beyond measure. Imagine being able to save just one child from being abused. How good would that make you feel? And you can prevent the abuser from harming other children if you report the suspicious activity. This is especially important, and really, how could we live with ourselves if we had knowledge of abuse and did not report it? If it happened to another child, or perhaps our own children. I want to show you a visual aid. This is just a poster for child abuse. And it says, every child is innocent. Save them from the fear. That is the responsibility of you too. Stop child abuse. And lastly, I ask you to consider if it was your child or family member who was being abused by a teacher, a neighbor, or a family member, and you found out someone suspected the abuse, or they had knowledge of the abuse, and they did not report that abuse. How would you feel? Would that make you upset, even angry, if they didn't? I just ask that you please be aware of the potential signs of child abuse, not just your own child or family member, but all children. The key, if you suspect child abuse, is to report it. You could potentially save a child's life.